Hello, I'm Anirban Kundu from University of Calcutta, and I'll talk about the Higgs-Boson problem, and I'll try to tell you why this is called a bottom-up approach. So let's first go to the standard model. This is a gauge theory based on the gauge group of SU3 of color for the strong interaction times SU2L times U1 of hypercharge. This SU2L times U1Y part is what gives you the electroweak interaction, the unification of electromagnetism and weak interaction first proposed by Glashow, Weinberg and Salam. This SU2L times U1, this U1 is not the same as the electromagnetic U1. This breaks to U1 electromagnetism, and because there are three broken generators, we expect three massive gauge bosons in the theory. These are the particle content of the standard model. There are 6 quarks and 6 leptons, 3 massive gauge bosons, W plus minus and Z. There's the photon for electromagnetism, and there are 8 gluons for strong interaction. For our purpose, only the top quark is relevant because this is extremely massive of about 175 giga electron volt. The rest are almost massless. There is another object called the Higgs boson. This is a spin zero or scalar field whose mass is about 125 giga electron volt. This is responsible for giving mass to the W plus minus and Z as well as to the fermions. We start with a potential like this. This is for a doublet field, doublet under SU2 of L. The potential looks like this if mu square is greater than 0. Therefore, the symmetry breaks spontaneously. The field rolls down to one of these possible vacua, and we replace the field by the field plus its vacuum expectation value, and this gives mass to everything. As I said, this field phi is a doublet whose remnant is the Higgs boson. The three other components are absorbed by the weak gauge bosons to give masses to them. This was predicted in 1964 and was discovered in 2012. In 2013, Peter Higgs and Francois Englert shared the Nobel Prize. It's the only fundamental spin zero object that we know of. Now, the mass of a particle is defined as the vacuum expectation value of the time-ordered product of these two fields. This gives you the propagator, and it's the pole of the propagator that gives you the mass. However, this is only at the lowest order. There are quantum corrections. So let's see what the quantum corrections do. If we look at the quantum corrections, they generally give you infinite contributions that are removed by something called renormalization. Here, I have shown some quantum corrections to the fermions, to the scalar, as well as to the gauge bosons. Now, it turns out that the divergence, the infinities for fermions as well as for the gauge bosons are logarithmic in nature, so they are not that hard. But there's no mechanism to protect the scalar mass. There's no mechanism to keep the scalar divergences at the logarithmic level. And that's easy to see. Just look at this thing. This is a propagator. So I have to integrate over the loop momentum, and that goes as lambda square. It's a quadratic divergence. Now that's bad. And let's see why this is bad. This is bad because your physical Higgs mass square is a sum of bare mass square plus the radiative correction, and I would expect the radiative correction to be of the order of lambda square because that's where the Planck mass lies, about 10 to the power 19 GeV. So this means a cancellation of 1 in 10 to the power 34. 10 to the power 38 and 10 to the power 38 gives rise to something like 10 to the power 4. And that's the fine-tuning problem, why the Higgs is at the electroweak scale and not at the Planck scale. There are several ways out. For example, I can have supersymmetric models where there are extra fields that cancel the radiative corrections. I can lower the Planck scale through extra dimensions. I can invoke some higher symmetry to keep the Higgs light. These are the little Higgs models. Or I can think of the Higgs as a composite of a fermion and an antifermion. These are the Technicolor models, which are now sort of out of favor. In this talk, we will briefly concentrate on the Weltman condition. This is a conjecture, sort of a conjecture, that there's some yet to be discovered symmetry that makes the sum of the quadratic divergences 0. That's why I will call this a bottom-up approach, because I am not assuming any ultraviolet complete theory. I'm just starting from the fact that the sum of these divergences should be 0 or very, very small, and try to find out what type of theory can accommodate this. For example, let's try with the standard model. If I try with the standard model, I know that this fails very badly because of this term. This is negative and m top is large. So this entire quantity is negative. Of course, we know that this condition is gauge invariant, but not Lorentz invariant, because we use the Cartov regularization. Cartov regularization is not Lorentz invariant, but that's fine. We'll just take out the quadratically divergent part. And that tells you that we need some new bosonic degrees of freedom or some hard dimensional operators. So let's look at two examples. The first example is with a 2 Higgs doublet model. Here I have 2 Higgs doublets, and the ratio of the vacuum expectation values is given by tan beta. That's the standard 2 Higgs doublet model potential. And of course, you have to use the usual constraints that there should be no flavor changing neutral current, and at least one mass eigenstate should be at 125 JeV. The stronger constraint comes from the fact that there are so many scalars, and all the scalars should have their own Weltman condition satisfied. If you play now with this coefficients, the lambda coefficients, you will say that we get a parameter space, possible parameter space, only for large values of tan beta. How large? Greater than 30 or 40, depending on what type of 2 Higgs doublet model you are talking about. Let's look at another example, an effective theory with dimension 6 operators. So the Lagrangian looks like this. Since this is a dimension 6, they're suppressed by 1 over lambda square, and therefore we expect a quartic divergence lambda to the power 4 coming from these loops. So ultimately it will contribute as a quadratic divergence. There are several operators that can do this thing, and if you just play with these Wilson coefficients, the CIs, you will find that it is indeed possible to have a solution even with a single Wilson coefficient, but this has to be negative. If you have multiple Wilson coefficients, at least one of them should be negative. And that should act as a guide to the model builders. If you have a model, just check whether your Wilson coefficients satisfy the Weltman condition. Okay, that's all for me. Thank you very much.